The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning Main Street into a river of neon reflections and shallow puddles that caught the light from the diner signs and the pharmacy's Red Cross. Thomas Reed walked the same route every Tuesday evening, past the hardware store with its peeling paint, past the empty lot where the movie theater used to stand, past the bus station where travelers hunched under the overhang, shaking water from their umbrellas. He kept his hands deep in his jacket pockets, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the pavement 3 steps ahead. Always 3 steps, never more, never less. He was 42 years old and hadn't smiled in 8 years. Not really. Not the kind of smile that reached the eyes and changed the shape of a face. Sometimes his mouth would twitch upward in the break room at the warehouse where he worked night shifts, when someone told a joke and the silence afterward demanded something. But that wasn't a smile. That was just a reflex, like flinching when a door slammed or scanning every exit the moment he entered a room. Thomas lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above the laundromat on 5th Street. The constant hum of the dryers below became white noise. He barely noticed anymore. He liked it that way, the mechanical rhythm, predictable and safe. In the evenings, he fixed old radios he bought from estate sales, spreading transistors and wires across his kitchen table under the yellow glow of a desk lamp. The radios never talked back. They never asked questions. They just needed patience and steady hands, and Thomas had both. The rain tapped harder against his shoulders as he passed the grocery store. He glanced at his watch, 6:47, 17 minutes until his shift started. Enough time to grab coffee from the gas station on the corner, the one with the burnt pot that sat on the burner too long, but cost $1 less than anywhere else. He was calculating the exact change in his head when he heard it. "Excuse me." The voice was small, barely audible over the rain. Thomas kept walking. "Excuse me, mister." Something tugged at his jacket sleeve. His whole body tensed, muscles coiling like springs. He stopped mid-step, didn't turn around, just stood there with rain drumming on his shoulders while his heart hammered against his ribs. Slowly, he looked down. A child stood beside him. Maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing a bright yellow raincoat with the hood pulled up. Water dripped from the edges of the hood, and beneath it, Thomas could see a round face with wide brown eyes and cheeks flushed from cold. The child clutched something in one hand, a stuffed rabbit, grey and worn, with one ear hanging by threads. "Can you help me find home?" 4 words, simple, direct. Thomas felt something shift in his chest, something he'd kept locked away so long he'd almost forgotten it was there. He wanted to say no. He wanted to keep walking, get his coffee, clock in, spend 8 hours moving boxes in the fluorescent silence of the warehouse. Instead, he heard himself say, "Where do you live?" The child blinked up at him, rain catching on eyelashes. "I don't know." "You don't know your address?" "I know the street name, kind of. It's got a tree name, like Maple or Oak, something like that." Thomas glanced around. Main Street was nearly empty, just a couple hurrying toward their car, an old man smoking under the barbershop awning. No frantic parents searching, no one calling a child's name. He looked back down. "Where's your mom? Your dad?" "Mom's at work. I was at my friend Sadie's house. But then I thought I could walk home by myself because I'm almost 8 and Mom says I'm responsible." The child's voice wavered slightly. "But everything looks different in the rain." Thomas ran a hand over his face, water streaming between his fingers. He should call the police. That was the logical thing. Let trained people handle this. But something in the child's eyes, not quite fear, but a careful hopefulness, stopped him. He recognized that look, the look of someone trying very hard to be brave while their world tilted sideways. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mia." "Okay, Mia. I'm Thomas." He knelt down slowly until he was at eye level. The movement made his knee ache, old injury, physical therapy he'd never finished. "We're going to figure this out. Can you tell me anything else about your house? What color is it?" "White, with blue shutters, and there's a big tree in the front yard. Mum says it's older than her." "That's good. What about landmarks? Do you pass anything special on your way to school? A store? A park? Anything?" Mia thought hard, her small forehead wrinkling. "There's a park with swings and a fountain that doesn't work anymore." Thomas knew 3 parks in town. 2 of them had fountains. He stood up, his knees protesting. "Let's start there. I need to make a phone call first, okay? To my work. Tell them I'll be late." He pulled out his phone, an old flip model he'd had for 6 years, because smartphones felt like too much information, too many notifications, too many ways for the world to demand his attention. He dialed the warehouse, spoke briefly to his supervisor, and hung up. When he looked back at Mia, she was shivering. "You cold?" She nodded. Thomas shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It swallowed her completely, the sleeves hanging past her hands. She looked up at him with something like gratitude, and he felt that strange shifting in his chest again, like ice breaking apart in early spring. They started walking. Thomas kept his pace slow, matching Mia's shorter strides. She held the stuffed rabbit close to her chest with one hand and used the other to keep his jacket from slipping off. The rain eased slightly, becoming a steady drizzle that blurred the streetlights into soft halos of gold and white. "How do you know so much about finding things?" Mia asked. "I don't. I'm just trying to help. But you seem like you know what you're doing. You ask good questions." Thomas didn't answer right away. They passed the post office, its flag hanging limp and heavy with water. "I used to be in the army. They taught us to assess situations, gather information." "Were you a soldier?" "Yeah, like in the movies." "Not really like the movies." Mia accepted this without pressing further, which surprised him. Most people, adults especially, wanted details, wanted to thank him for his service, wanted to fit his experience into neat boxes labeled hero or victim or broken. But Mia just kept walking, her small hand gripping the rabbit's remaining good ear. They reached the first park, Riverside, tucked between the community center and the old Presbyterian church. The swings swayed empty in the breeze, chains creaking. There was a fountain, but it was more of a decorative bird bath near the entrance. Thomas looked at Mia. "This one?" She shook her head. "The fountain's bigger, and it's got a statue in the middle, like an angel or something." "Okay, there's another park, about 15 minutes from here." "Is it far?" "We'll take our time." They turned down a side street lined with houses that had seen better decades. Paint peeling, gutters sagging, yards overtaken by weeds. Thomas noticed Mia looking around with increasing uncertainty, her steps slowing. He wanted to offer reassurance, but the words felt clumsy in his mouth. He wasn't good at this, at comfort, at connection. He'd spent 8 years perfecting the art of disconnection, of building walls so high nothing could reach him. And now here he was, walking through the rain with a lost child who trusted him enough to follow. A car passed too close, tires spraying water. Thomas pulled Mia onto the sidewalk, his hand on her shoulder, and felt her flinch beneath his touch. He let go immediately, that old familiar guilt flooding through him. Too rough, too sudden. He couldn't even protect someone without scaring them. "Sorry," he muttered. "It's okay," Mia said quietly. "You were just keeping me safe." Something about the way she said it, so matter-of-fact without accusation, loosened the knot in Thomas's throat. They kept walking. The second park was called Lincoln Heights, though everyone just called it the Heights. It sat on a small hill overlooking the river, with a crumbling stone fountain at its center. The statue in the middle was indeed an angel, wings spread, face turned skyward, green with age and moss. The fountain hadn't worked in years. Thomas remembered coming here as a kid, remembered the sound of water splashing, remembered his mother sitting on the bench with a paperback novel while he played in the grass. "That's it!" Mia's voice lifted with recognition. "That's the fountain." Relief flickered through Thomas. "Okay, good. So your house is near here?" "I think so. It's—" She turned in a slow circle, scanning the streets that branched off from the park. "It's that way, I think." She pointed down a residential street that curved out of sight. They followed it. The houses here were better maintained, modest but cared for, with trimmed hedges and American flags hanging limp on front porches. Thomas watched Mia's face, saw her confidence falter with each block they passed. None of the houses looked quite right. None of them sparked the flash of recognition he was hoping for. After 10 minutes, Mia stopped walking. Her chin trembled. "I thought it was this way." "Hey, it's okay." Thomas knelt down again, ignoring the protest in his knee. "We're doing fine. Sometimes things look different in the rain. Different light, different time of day. You said your street has a tree name?" "Yeah, maple or oak or... I can't remember." Her eyes were filling with tears. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. You're doing great." The words came easier now, surprising him. "What else do you remember? Does your house have anything special? A mailbox? A welcome mat? Anything your mom put outside?" Mia thought hard, wiping at her eyes with the oversized sleeve of his jacket. "There's a garden gnome. Mom bought it at a yard sale and put it by the front steps. I told her it was creepy, but she said it had character." "A garden gnome. Okay, that's something we can look for." Thomas stood up, his shirt now soaked through. The cold was starting to seep into his bones. "Let's try the next street over. Sometimes the street names are grouped together, all tree names in one area." They backtracked to the park and took a different road. This one was called Birch Lane. Thomas felt a small surge of hope. They walked slowly, scanning each house. Mia peered through gaps in fences, looking for the telltale white siding and blue shutters, the big tree, the creepy garden gnome with character. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The rain picked up again, harder now, drumming on roofs and turning the gutters into small waterfalls. Thomas checked his phone, battery at 15%. He should have charged it last night, but he'd fallen asleep at the kitchen table with a screwdriver in his hand and a radio in pieces before him. "Mia, does your mom have a phone?" "Yeah." "Do you know the number?" She shook her head. "It's saved in my phone, but I left my phone at Sadie's house." "What about Sadie's parents? Do they know you left?" "I told them I was going home. They thought my mom was picking me up." Thomas felt a twist of frustration, not at Mia, but at the situation, at the miscommunication that had left a child wandering alone in the rain. He tried to keep his voice calm. "Okay, we'll find your house, and if we don't find it soon, we'll go to the police station and they can help." "Are you mad?" "No, not at you." "You sound mad." He took a breath, forcing his shoulders to relax. "I'm not mad, I want to get you home safe, and I'm worried we're running out of time before it gets dark." Mia looked at the sky, at the heavy grey clouds that made the afternoon feel like dusk. "My mom's going to be worried." "Yeah, she will be, but we're going to fix that." They turned onto Oak Street. Thomas's heart lifted slightly. Another tree name. They walked past house after house, and then Mia grabbed his arm. "There!" She pointed at a white house with blue shutters, a massive oak tree dominating the front yard, and a cheerful ceramic gnome standing guard by the front steps. The gnome wore a red hat and had a painted smile that did look somewhat creepy in the fading light. "That's it! That's my house!" Thomas felt something unclench in his chest. They hurried up the driveway, Mia practically running now, but when they reached the front door it was locked. The windows were dark, no car in the driveway. "She's not home yet," Mia said, her voice small again. Thomas checked his phone. 7:53. "When does your mom usually get home from work?" Around 8. Sometimes later if the bus is running behind. Okay, so she should be here soon. He looked around. Do you have a key? Somewhere hidden? Under the mat, but... Mia bent down and lifted the corner of the welcome mat. No key. It was there this morning. Maybe your mom took it with her. Maybe. They stood on the porch, rain pouring off the eaves, and Thomas tried to decide what to do next. They could wait here, hope the mother showed up soon, or they could go to the police station, file a report, do this officially. But something kept him rooted in place. The memory of institutions, of paperwork, of well-meaning people who asked questions in bright rooms and made everything feel worse instead of better. Can we wait inside? Mia asked. I'm really cold. We can't break in. That's not the back door. Sometimes Mom forgets to lock it. Thomas hesitated. Technically, this was trespassing, but Mia lived here, and she was shivering despite his jacket. He made a decision. Okay, let's check. They walked around to the back of the house. The backyard was small but well kept, a vegetable garden under plastic tarps, a clothesline sagging with rain weight, a wooden fence that needed a fresh coat of stain. Mia tried the back door handle. It turned. Relief flooded her face. They stepped inside into a mudroom that smelled like laundry detergent and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. Mia kicked off her wet shoes and hung Thomas's jacket on a hook by the door. You can come in. You're all wet. Thomas stood in the doorway, water dripping from his clothes onto the worn linoleum. Every instinct told him to leave, to wait outside, to not cross this boundary. But Mia was already padding through to the kitchen, turning on lights, and the warmth seeping from the house was undeniable. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and stood very still, counting his breaths. 1, 2, 3. The house was quiet except for the rain outside and the hum of the refrigerator. Normal sounds. Safe sounds, but his heart was racing anyway, his hands trembling slightly. He pressed them against his thighs and focused on the present moment. Kitchen, yellow walls, a calendar hanging by the fridge with appointments written in neat handwriting, a drawing taped to the cabinet, crayon stick figures holding hands. Do you want tea? Mia called from the living room. I'm okay. Mom always makes tea when she's cold. Thomas followed the sound of her voice and found her in a small living room with a couch covered in throw blankets and a TV on a stand that had seen better days. Family photos covered the walls, Mia at different ages, a woman with kind eyes and dark hair, no father in any of the pictures. Mia had already wrapped herself in a blanket and was sitting on the couch, the stuffed rabbit in her lap. She looked at Thomas with an expression that was hard to read, part exhaustion, part relief, part something else. Thank you for helping me. You're welcome. Are you going to wait until my mom gets home? Thomas checked his phone. Battery at 8%, almost 8 o'clock. Yeah, I should probably explain what happened. Okay, Mia yawned. You can sit down. You don't have to stand by the door. He moved slowly into the room and sat in an armchair that faced the front window. From here he could see the street, could watch for a car pulling into the driveway. His wet clothes were uncomfortable, clinging to his skin, but he didn't move. He just sat there, hands on his knees, watching the rain and listening to the sound of Mia's breathing as it gradually slowed and deepened. Minutes passed. Thomas's phone died. The house settled around them with small creaks and sighs. He found himself relaxing slightly, the adrenaline that had been coursing through him since Mia first tugged on his sleeve finally starting to ebb. When was the last time he'd been inside someone else's home? Years. Since before the last deployment, when his buddy Marcus had invited him over for a barbecue, and Thomas had made excuses and left early, unable to stand the noise, the laughter, the normalcy of it all. He looked at Mia, curled up on the couch, fighting sleep. She'd trusted him, a complete stranger in the rain, and she'd trusted him enough to ask for help. He didn't know what to do with that feeling, the weight of it, the responsibility, but also the strange lightness, like something inside him that had been rusted shut was starting to move again. Headlights swept across the window. A car pulled into the driveway, an older sedan with a dent in the rear bumper. Thomas stood up as the engine cut off. A moment later, the front door burst open and a woman rushed inside, hair plastered to her face, purse swinging from her shoulder. "Mia!" She saw her daughter on the couch and relief crashed across her features. "Oh, thank God. I've been calling everyone. Sadie's mum said you left and—" She stopped, noticing Thomas standing in her living room. Her expression shifted to confusion, then wariness. "Who are you?" "Mum, this is Thomas. He helped me find home." Mia sat up, rubbing her eyes. The woman, Thomas assumed this was Mia's mother, looked between them. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of face that had weathered too much worry too fast. "What happened?" Thomas kept his voice calm, his hands visible at his sides. "I found Mia on Main Street. She was lost. She asked me to help her get home." "You've been with him this whole time?" The mother's voice rose slightly. "Mia, you know better than to go with strangers." "I was lost, Mom. And Thomas was nice. He gave me his jacket and we looked for the fountain, and he didn't get mad when I couldn't remember which street we lived on, and it's okay." The mother held up a hand, took a breath. She looked at Thomas again, really looked at him this time. "I'm sorry. I'm Elena. Thank you for bringing her home safe." The wariness in her eyes softened slightly. "I should have been home earlier. The bus broke down and my phone was dead and—" She stopped, shook her head. "It's been a day." "It's okay," Thomas said. "She's safe. That's what matters." Eleanor nodded slowly. She moved to the couch and pulled Mia into a fierce hug. "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever leave without making sure I know where you are." "I'm sorry, Mom. I know you are." Eleanor kissed the top of her daughter's head, then looked back at Thomas. "You're soaked. Do you need a towel? Some dry clothes?" "I'm fine, I should go. At least let me give you your jacket back." Thomas glanced at where his jacket hung in the mudroom. It seemed like a lifetime ago that he'd draped it over Mia's shoulders. "Keep it. It's old anyway. I can't just, please." The word came out rougher than he intended. He softened his tone. "Keep it." Elena studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, thank you. Really, I don't know what would have happened if—" "She's smart. She would have figured it out." "Maybe." Elena smiled slightly. "But I'm glad she found you first." Thomas didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. He moved toward the door, his wet shoes squeaking on the floor. Behind him he heard Mia say, "Bye, Thomas. Thank you for being my friend today." He paused, his hand on the doorknob. Friend? When was the last time someone had called him that? He turned around. Mia was watching him from the couch, still wrapped in her blanket, the stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. And something happened, something he hadn't felt in 8 years. The corners of his mouth lifted, just slightly, just enough to change his face. "You're welcome, Mia." Elena saw it too, the smile, small as it was. She tilted her head slightly, curiosity flickering across her features, but she didn't say anything. Thomas opened the door and stepped back out into the rain. The walk back to his apartment felt different. The same streets, the same puddles reflecting neon light. But something had shifted. Thomas couldn't name it exactly. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was more like a door opening a crack, letting in a sliver of light after years of darkness. When he got home, he changed into dry clothes and sat at his kitchen table. The radio he'd been working on still lay in pieces, circuit boards and wires spread across the surface. He picked up a transistor, turned it over in his fingers, and set it down again. For once, he didn't feel like fixing something broken. He felt like sitting in the quiet and thinking about the small hand that had tugged on his sleeve, the voice that had asked, "Can you help me find home?" He'd helped. He'd done something good. And for a few hours, he hadn't been Thomas the broken veteran. Thomas who worked night shifts and avoided crowds and kept everyone at arm's length. He'd just been Thomas, someone a child trusted enough to ask for help. The next morning, Thomas woke to sunlight streaming through his window, the first clear day in a week. He made coffee, got dressed, and found himself walking toward the park without consciously deciding to do so. Lincoln Heights looked different in daylight. The fountain's angel cast sharp shadows, and the grass sparkled with leftover raindrops. Families were out, kids on swings, parents pushing strollers, an old couple walking hand in hand along the path. Thomas sat on a bench and watched them. He'd avoided places like this for years, places full of people and unpredictability, and reminders of everything he'd left behind. But today, he stayed. He watched a little boy chase pigeons, heard a girl's laughter ringing clear across the green space, saw a father lift his daughter onto his shoulders. Something in his chest ached, not the sharp pain of a wound, but the deeper ache of healing, the way a broken bone hurts when it starts to knit itself back together. He thought about Mia, about Elena's exhausted gratitude, about the way Mia had looked at him and said, "You're my friend." He pulled out his phone, charged now, battery full. He stared at it for a long moment, then opened his contacts. There was a number he'd saved years ago and never called, a veterans support group that met every Tuesday evening at the community center. He'd driven past it 100 times, always meaning to go, always finding an excuse not to. He typed out a message, "Is there still room in the Tuesday group?" The response came 10 minutes later. "Always room, we meet at 6, hope to see you there." Thomas read it 3 times. His thumb hovered over the delete button. It would be so easy to back out, to say he'd changed his mind, to go back to his apartment and his radios and his carefully constructed solitude. But then he thought about Mia's voice in the rain, asking if he could help her find home. Maybe he was looking for home too. Maybe home wasn't a place, but a series of small choices, saying yes when every instinct screamed no, showing up when it felt impossible, letting people see the parts of yourself you'd kept hidden for so long. He typed back, "I'll be there." That Tuesday evening, Thomas walked into the community center for the first time. The room was small, with chairs arranged in a circle and a coffee maker gurgling in the corner. 8 people were already there, men and women of different ages, some looking as nervous as he felt. A woman with grey hair and kind eyes smiled at him. "You must be Thomas. I'm Karen. We're glad you're here." He took a seat, his hands gripping his knees. Everyone went around introducing themselves, sharing a little about why they'd come. When it was Thomas's turn, his throat felt tight. "I'm Thomas. I don't really know what to say. I haven't talked about any of this in a long time." "That's okay," Karen said gently. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready to share. Just being here is enough." The meeting continued. People talked about their struggles, nightmares, hypervigilance, the difficulty of connecting with family, the exhaustion of trying to appear normal. Thomas listened, and with each story he felt less alone. These people understood. They'd walked through the same darkness. When the meeting ended, a man about Thomas's age approached him. "First time's the hardest. It gets easier. Does it? Some days, not all days, but some." The man held out his hand. "I'm David. Been coming here for 2 years. It helps." Thomas shook his hand. "Thomas, I know. Welcome." Walking home that night, Thomas felt lighter, not fixed, not healed. but lighter, like he'd set down a burden he'd been carrying for too long. He thought about Mia again, wondered if she was safe at home, wondered if Elena had figured out a system to make sure her daughter always knew where she was going. A week later, Thomas was fixing a radio at his kitchen table when someone knocked on his door. He tensed immediately. No one ever knocked on his door. He approached slowly, looked through the peephole, and saw Eleanor and Mia standing in the hallway. He opened the door. "Hi." "Hi," Eleanor said, looking almost as nervous as he felt. "I hope it's okay we just showed up. Mia remembered you said you lived above the laundromat, and she insisted we bring you this." She held out a plastic container. "It's banana bread. I made too much." Thomas took the container, felt its warmth through the plastic. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." "We wanted to," Mia piped up, "to say thank you again, for helping me, and for being nice even when I couldn't remember my street name." Thomas looked down at her. She was wearing a purple jacket today, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. The stuffed rabbit was tucked under her arm, looking slightly less worse for wear. "You're welcome. Again." "Do you still fix radios?" Mia asked, craning her neck to see inside the apartment. "Yeah." "Can I see?" Thomas glanced at Elena, who nodded slightly. "If it's okay with you. We won't stay long, Mia's been talking about you all week, about how you helped her, and I wanted to thank you properly." Thomas stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in." They followed him inside. The apartment was sparse, no decorations, no personal touches, except for the radios spread across various surfaces. Mia immediately went to the kitchen table, eyes wide. "Wow, how many radios do you have?" "About 20. Some work, some don't, yet." "Can you fix any of them?" "Most of them. It just takes time." Mia examined a small wooden radio with brass dials. "Why do you fix old ones instead of buying new ones?" Thomas thought about that. "Because there's something worthwhile in things that are broken. They just need someone to be patient with them." Eleanor met his eyes over Mia's head, and something unspoken passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or just recognition that they were both doing their best with what life had given them. They stayed for half an hour. Mia asked a million questions about radios and circuits and how sound waves traveled through the air. Thomas answered each one, surprised by how easily the conversation flowed. When they left, Elena paused in the doorway. "The Veterans Group meets Tuesday evenings, right? At the community center?" Thomas blinked. "Yeah." "How did you—" "I volunteer there sometimes. In the office, I saw your name on the sign-up sheet." She smiled. "It's a good group. Karen's wonderful." "You know Karen? She helped me when I was going through my divorce. Different group, same approach. Showing up is half the battle." Thomas nodded slowly. "Yeah, it is." "Well, thank you again for everything." Eleanor took Mia's hand. "Say goodbye." "Bye, Thomas. Can we visit again?" Thomas found himself saying, "Yeah, that would be okay." After they left, Thomas sat at his kitchen table with the container of banana bread. He opened it, broke off a piece, and ate it slowly. It was good, moist and sweet, with just the right amount of cinnamon. The taste reminded him of his mother's kitchen when he was young, Sunday mornings with the newspaper spread across the table and something baking in the oven. He finished the piece and reached for another, then stopped. The radio in front of him, the wooden one with brass dials that Mia had admired, was almost complete. He picked up his screwdriver and got to work. An hour later, the radio crackled to life. Static at first, then a voice coming through clear and strong. A news broadcast, then music, then someone reading the weather. Thomas turned the dial, listening to different stations, and felt something unexpected. Satisfaction. Not just in fixing the radio, but in the whole evening, in Mia's questions and Elena's kindness, and the simple fact of people choosing to seek him out. Over the following weeks, a pattern developed. Thomas went to his Tuesday meetings. Elena and Mia visited sometimes on Saturdays, usually bringing food or staying to watch him work on radios. Mia told him stories about school, about her friends, about the creepy garden gnome that she'd decided wasn't so creepy after all. Elena talked less, but listened more, and Thomas appreciated that, the lack of pressure to perform or explain himself. One Saturday, Mia asked, "Why didn't you smile for so long?" Thomas set down the radio he'd been working on. Elena started to interrupt. "Mia, that's personal." "It's okay." Thomas looked at Mia, at her open, curious face, and decided to be honest. Sometimes when people go through really hard things, they forget how to feel happy. It's not that they don't want to. They just can't. Not for a while. "But you smiled at me when you left our house that night." "I did." "Why then?" Thomas thought about it. "Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that there are still people worth showing up for, worth trying for." Mia considered this seriously. "I'm glad I got lost that day." Elena laughed softly. "Mia, you can't say that." "But I am. Otherwise I wouldn't have met Thomas. And Thomas wouldn't have started smiling again." Thomas felt that shift in his chest again, the ice breaking, the door opening wider. "Me too, kid, me too." Time moved forward. Thomas kept going to his meetings, kept fixing his radios, kept showing up when Elena and Mia visited. He started talking more in the group sessions, sharing pieces of his story he'd kept locked away. It was hard. Some days he wanted to quit, to disappear back into the safety of silence. But then he'd remember Mia's hand, tugging at his sleeve, her voice asking for help, and he'd stay. One evening in late autumn, Thomas was walking home from work when he saw a man sitting on the curb outside the gas station, head in his hands. Thomas recognized the posture, the defeated slump, the isolation even in a public place. He almost kept walking. "Mind your business. Don't get involved." But then he stopped. "You okay?" The man looked up. He was younger, maybe late 20s, with dark circles under his eyes and a jacket that had seen better days. "Yeah, fine." Thomas could have left it there, but he didn't. "You don't look fine." "I'm just—" The man's voice cracked. "I'm trying to get home, to my kid, but I missed the last bus, and I don't have money for a cab, and I don't know what to do." Thomas pulled out his wallet. He had $40, money he'd been saving for groceries. He held it out. "Take this. Get home to your kid." The man stared at the money like it was a lifeline. "I can't. I don't even know you." "That's okay. Take it anyway." "Why would you?" "Because someone helped me once, and it mattered." Thomas pressed the bills into the man's hand. "Get home safe." The man's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, God, thank you." Thomas nodded and walked away, feeling something new. Not just satisfaction, but purpose. He was becoming someone who helped instead of someone who hid. It wasn't a linear path. Some days he still struggled. Some nights he still woke up gasping, trapped in memories that wouldn't let go. But he kept showing up, for the Tuesday meetings, for Elena and Mia, for himself. Winter came, bringing snow that covered the town in white silence. Thomas spent Christmas Eve at Elena's house, helping Mia decorate cookies while Elena cooked dinner. It felt strange at first, being part of someone else's holiday, someone else's traditions, but Elena made it easy, never pushing, just including him in small, natural ways. After dinner, Mia showed him the drawing she'd made, 3 stick figures holding hands. "That's you, me, and Mom. We're a team." Thomas looked at the drawing, at the careful way Mia had drawn his smile, and felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, we are." That night, walking home through snow-quiet streets, Thomas thought about the past year, about the rainy evening when a lost child had changed everything, He thought about all the small moments since then, the first Tuesday meeting, the first time he'd laughed at something in the group, the first time he'd woken up and not immediately wanted to disappear. He thought about home, not a place, but a feeling. The feeling of belonging, of mattering, of being connected to something larger than his own pain. When he got to his apartment, he didn't turn on the radio. He just sat by the window, looking out at the snow and the streetlights and the small town that had become slowly and unexpectedly his home again. He smiled. Not a big smile. Not a transformative moment that fixed everything wrong in his life. Just a small, quiet smile, the kind that says, "I'm still here. I'm still trying." And maybe that's enough. The next morning, Thomas woke early and made coffee. He sat at his kitchen table with a blank piece of paper and a pen, and he wrote a letter, not to anyone specific, just to himself, a reminder for the hard days ahead. You survived, not just the war, but the years after. You survived the silence and the isolation and the belief that you were too broken to matter. And then a child asked for help, and you said yes. That yes changed everything. Healing isn't a straight line. Some days you'll feel strong. Some days you'll barely make it through. But you're not alone anymore. You have a group that understands. You have a kid who thinks you're worth visiting. You have people who see you, not the uniform you used to wear, not the things you've survived, but you. Keep showing up. Keep saying yes when it feels impossible. Keep believing that even broken things can be fixed if someone's patient enough to try. You smiled. After 8 years, you smiled. And that matters more than you know. Thomas folded the letter and tucked it into the drawer with his important papers. Then he put on his jacket, a new one Elena had insisted on buying him, and headed out into the cold morning. He had somewhere to be, a Tuesday meeting. But first, he stopped at the bakery on Main Street and bought 3 cinnamon rolls, 1 for himself and 2 to share with anyone who showed up to the meeting hungry. As he walked, he passed the spot where Mia had first tugged on his sleeve. He stopped for a moment, remembering that rainy evening, the fear and uncertainty, the way something inside him had shifted at her simple question. "Can you help me find home?" He'd thought he was helping her, but maybe in the end, she'd helped him find his way home too. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of Thomas's journey from isolation to connection, I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel. We share stories that matter, stories about real human struggles, about finding light in dark places, about the small moments that change everything. Every subscriber helps us continue bringing these stories to life, and every comment you leave becomes part of a community that believes in the power of hope and healing. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing that even after years of darkness, there's always a chance to smile again.